We're getting some new reporting on the alleged push to hide President Trump's high school records. You'll recall that last week, Michael Cohen told the House Oversight Committee about the actions he says the president made him take to conceal those documents.
I'm talking about a man who declares himself brilliant, but directed me to threaten his high school, his colleges, and the college board to never release his grades or SAT scores. The irony wasn't lost on me at the time that Mr. Trump, in 2011, had strongly criticized President Obama for not releasing his grades. As you can see in Exhibit 7, Mr. Trump declared, "Let him show his records," after calling President Obama a terrible student.
The Washington Post tracked down alumni and former administrators at the New York Military Academy to learn more about the president's school records. Marc Fisher wrote that piece. He's a senior editor for the Washington Post. Marc, thanks so much for joining us. What did administrators and alumni at the New York Military Academy tell you about efforts to keep the president's school records hidden in 2011?
Well, it was shortly after Donald Trump made that statement that Michael Cohen referenced about telling President Obama that he had been a terrible student and he should release his own academic records. Within hours after that statement, the administrators at the New York Military Academy, where President Trump went to high school, received word from wealthy alumni who were friends of Mr. Trump, ordering them to go find Trump's academic record, remove it from the school, and hand it over to them, supposedly for safekeeping. The then superintendent of the school, the top executive there, told me that he did order that the records be removed from the files in the basement of a building on campus, but he did not hand them over to the alumni. He said he thought that would be going a bit too far, so he instead secreted them into a hiding place on campus, where they remained for quite some time. It's not clear if they're still there, but that's why they haven't been leaked or shown to the public in any kind of way.
Well, you wrote about a meeting graduates from the school had with President Trump when the school was facing financial troubles. What happened there?
Well, this was just a few months before this removal of the President Trump's records from the school. What happened was the school was in tremendous financial distress, and so they reached out to some of their more prominent wealthy alumni, including Donald Trump. They asked him for $7 million at a meeting at Trump Tower. He declined to make any contribution. He told them that, in fact, the school had had a good run and maybe it was time for the land that it sat on to be turned into condos. This did not go over terribly well with the alumni, and something of a rift developed, but there were some on the board of the school who remained loyal enough friends to Trump that when time came to remove his student records, they went ahead and took care of that for him.
So just to be clear, do we have a sense of where these records are now, somewhere on the campus?
Well, the last superintendent of the school to put them in this hiding place says that he thinks they're still on campus, but he can't be sure. He hasn't been back there for several years. We've heard from other sources that it may be that a successor to that man handed the records over to a couple of the alumni. So it's not clear where they are at this point. They do not appear to be available to people at the school, and whether they're available to anyone is a bit of a mystery.
Well, as we heard, Michael Cohen alleges that the president directed him to threaten his schools to hide his records. If true, does the president have the legal right to keep his school records hidden?
Well, sure. Under federal privacy law, student records are protected, and they can be released when a student or an alumnus gives permission for them to be made open, which obviously Donald Trump has not done. You know, student records have become an issue for presidents and presidential candidates, from Kennedy to Nixon to George W. Bush and so on, and President Obama as well. And so there have been some who have released those records to the public and others who have not. Some of them have handled this issue with some charm, as President George W. Bush did, talking about how his poor record in school prepared him for the presidency. But Donald Trump has repeatedly argued that he was at the very top of his class, both in high school and college, and we have some documents that show that in fact he was not, that he was not on the honor roll, did not receive academic honors, so we know he was not at the top of those classes.
So perhaps this answers my next question. Nevertheless, did you learn more about why the president allegedly made Cohen threaten his schools?
Well, the president has repeatedly throughout his career declared that he was indeed a top student, in some cases the very top of his class, and so he would be reluctant for records that would show otherwise to be made public. Whether there are additional items in those records about behavior, other issues, we simply don't know.
All right, it is a fascinating read. Marc Fisher, thanks very much for your time, Marc.
Thank you.